point is that the efforts of some 40 years after independence have been completely wiped out in the last decade. In fact, the last 14 years, I would say, of neoliberal economic reforms. Today, we are back to a per capita availability of only 155 kilograms. So if you take an average family of 4 members, that means that almost 100 kilograms less per annum is being absorbed by an average family in India today, which is a phenomenal drop. If you make international comparisons, today we have the lowest per capita food grains availability outside sub-Saharan Africa and some least developed countries.
Whatever the media may want us to believe, most Indians still live in the villages and depend entirely on agriculture. And what is the state of agriculture that contributes 26% to our national GDP and provides employment to 58% of our vast population?
If you look at the absolute amount which is being spent, which was spent last year under the UPA government, it was a mere 15,000 crores of rupees on rural development, which includes agriculture and rural development, irrigation and flood control, village and small-scale industry. Now, 15,000 crores of rupees was being spent 18 years ago, just after the drought of 1987. So it's a phenomenal drop. It's an absolute cut, leave alone a relative cut. And every 100 rupees that the government spends less on development means, because of the operation of reverse multiplier effects, that incomes go down by 400 to 500 rupees, unemployment rises. So that is what has produced the crisis of rising unemployment, falling incomes and falling purchasing power, particularly in rural India.
This shrinking of purchasing power is responsible for the drop in food grain consumption. In plain words, a vast number of invisible Indians do not have the money to buy food that they grow. As people lose their purchasing power, they are unable to buy grain from the public distribution system, popularly called PDS. In the decade following the implementation of the new economic policy, the sale of food grains in the Russian shops halved. And what was the state's response? People don't seem to need the food grains any longer, so let us restrict food subsidy to those living below the poverty line.
Public distribution system is the biggest system in this country to provide food security to millions of people. It has reached almost every small village. It functions in every small village and therefore is accessible to everyone. And amongst the food security schemes, therefore, this is one of the important and vital system which unfortunately the government is planning to dismantle. Why are we saying that is because the actions of the government in central as well as Maharashtra states speak for itself. First it was that PDS offered substantial food grains to families. That was for a family of 5, it used to offer about 70 kgs per month. This was reduced.
4 kg card అనేవానికి ఒక కుటుంబానికి 1 member card 4 kg. ఆ 1 member 4 kg ఇస్తే 4 kg సరిపోతలేదు అక్కడ. అయితే మాక్సిమం లా 10 నుంచి 15 kg కంపల్సరీ కావాల్సిందే ఒక మనిషికి. రోజు హాఫ్ కేజీ నాన్ 15 kg కంపల్సరీ కావాల్సిందే. అయితే మేమేమంటామంటే అమ్మ నీ కార్డ్ మీద 4 kgలు వస్తాయి, 4 kgలు ఇస్తానే అంట. దాంతో కొన్ని గొడవలు అవుతున్నాయి. 2 members 8 kg. 2 members 8 kg అంటే 8 kgలు ఇద్దరు మేము ఏం తింటారు సార్ అక్కడ? పొద్దు సమానం పని చేస్తాడు, 8 kg బియ్యం సరిపోతాయి ఆ నెల మొత్తంలో? సరిపోనమాట అది. అట్లా కాకపోతే ఏంటంటే మాక్సిమంలో ప్రతి కార్డుకు ఒక 20 kg అనే బియ్యం ఏర్పాటు చేస్తే కానీ మనం అడ్జస్ట్ అవుతుంది సార్.
Due to pressure from the World Bank, the state has totally changed its policies, public distribution system, revamped the public distribution system. Earlier farmer, the card holder, the BPL card holders were getting 25 kgs per family at the rate of 3 rupees. This was hiked up and the price has gone up to 525 and the quantity also has come down. Instead of 25, they are now supplying a maximum of 20 kgs.
I guess one of the things I do enjoy about working at the World Bank is no one argues about the mission. The mission is how to reduce poverty, and there have been some amazing successes in the last 20 years around the world, including here in India, in reducing poverty.
The government of India has very proudly told the whole world recently that poverty in India has reduced from 36% to 26%. Has poverty really reduced, or is it statistical jugglery? Now, the poverty line can be seen in two ways. You can look at the calorie intake, or you can look at the income of a person. If you go by calorie intake, as Professor Patnaik has done, Professor Patnaik in her book, The Republic of Hunger, studying the NSS data, the National Sample Survey data, has found 700 million people consuming less than 2,400 kilocalories per person per day, which is the poverty line fixed in 1979. So 700 million people below the poverty line. Government goes by the cash standard. The cash standard today, according to government and the Planning Commission's latest figures, is 17 rupees per person per day, 1/3 of $1 per day. 17 rupees is not even enough for an employee in my office to come from his home to the office and back by bus. And that is the poverty line which the government relies on. 1/3 the 1 day standard, which is the old international poverty line, and 1/6 of the new international poverty line, which is $2 per day. So by artificially reducing the poverty line, the government imagines poor people disappearing all over the country.
The poverty estimates we are being given are absurdly low. If you turn that monthly figure into a daily figure, it's a very simple exercise, anybody can do it. 2004 poverty line, Planning Commission, rural India, 344 rupees. Divide by 30. What do you get? You get less than 11 rupees 50 paisa per day. On 11 rupees 50 paisa per day, the Planning Commission is telling us that somebody in village India is supposed to meet not only the food requirement, but all the non-food requirements. Fuel, clothing, housing, education, transport on 11.5 rupees per day. So the poverty line varies from less than 8 rupees a day to 11.5 rupees, maximum 12 rupees a day. That's what it is. And, you know, we are being taken for a ride. These estimators should be asked to go and live only for 1 week in a village. That is my suggestion. Give them, hand them, each of them, 7 times their daily estimate. Give Planning Commission members 80 rupees to live on for 1 week. And tell them, we will give you shelter, we will allow you to keep your clothes, but you have to meet your food costs, your medicine cost, and your transport cost out of this 11.5 rupees maximum per day. I will tell you they'll run away in 1 day because all they will be able to buy is 1 bottle of mineral water, that's all.
రాషన్ 20 కిలోల బియ్యం ఇస్తారు సార్, అది 5.5 చొప్పున అవి 20 కిలోలు వేసిపోతుంటి, ఇంకో 20 కిలోలు 30 కిలోలు తీసుకొస్తుంటి, అవి వేసిపోతుంటి. ఇక అవి మిరప కూరగాయలంటే అవి అంటే ఇవంటే వీటికే వెళ్ళి వెళ్ళక అట్లా అయింది సంసారం. ఆమె బాగలేక కొంచెం చాలా మందులకైనా చాలా పెట్టి కూడా అందలేము మొన్నటి నెలల మందులు.
PDS functioned perfectly well. Of course, there were minor problems here and there, but for 25 years up to 1991, it functioned, you know. So why did the problem start after 1991? The problem started because when people lost purchasing power, they were unable to access food grains even from the PDS. You had a fall in sales from the PDS, from the fair price shops. From 20 million tons in 1991, it fell to less than 10 million tons in year 2001. Okay? Now, the procurement operations were going on. It is not as though people did not need the food. All right? They needed the food, but they simply did not have the purchasing power. All right, that is why you had the stocks building up, and most of the subsidy was going more and more towards the cost of holding the stocks alone. So what do the liberalizers then turn around and say? They say the PDS is not working, and the cost of holding stocks is too high.